Hello dear viewer, dear listener. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe, coming to you once again as the host of this wonderful program of ours, Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. I'm bringing to you once again a previous guest, Mr. Kgengwenyane, who is coming for the second time to share with us on the subject of happiness in general. We have dealt with certain aspects of it. We want to just delve a little bit deeper. But I'm going to invite you to reintroduce yourself to the viewer and explain who you are and what you do.
Thank you so much, Mogobe. It's a pleasure to be on your program. And as we said, my name is Oabona Kgengwenyane. I'm a Managing Director of InnoLead Group of Companies. I like to see myself as an entrepreneur and also as a transformational consultant. As at InnoLead, we do management consulting services and so forth. So as an entrepreneur, I founded InnoLead Consulting, which was before then was Expert Group, and which does project management, strategy, performance management, and so forth. And we also have a technology company called Digital High Technologies, which focuses on high-end ICT solutions for our telco and general ICT. And we also have a farming operations where we do farming at the Sandveld and Banyana farms, where we do top range Simbra and Chabre cattle. Okay. So that is who I am, sir.
Okay. We talked about happiness last time, and I don't know whether we have a working definition. We did cover a few points. Do you think there's a working definition which we can use going forward? What is happiness?
Yeah, I stay away from very complex textbook definitions. I would like to see happiness as really a state of flourishing, where you feel that when you ask about your life satisfaction of quality of life, it's way above zero or it's above average. Yeah. That's really the simplest form of happiness. In a holistic manner, when you look at health, when you look at your career, when you look at financials, all those things brought together define your level of happiness. Obviously, including what they call positive emotions or pleasures of life that you have access to. So that's really the simple view of what happiness is, to the feeling that you are living your good life.
Okay. Yeah. Let's talk about countries. What typically are the attributes of happy countries? I'd like you to talk about African countries and then maybe talk a little bit about European and Asian countries. Make those comparisons and tell us what are the attributes that can be detected.
Sure.
And don't be afraid to name names as well.
No, sure, I'll definitely do that.
Yes.
Like I said before, there is a very prestigious survey that's done by United Nations on an annual basis. It's been running since 2007, which is called the United Nations Happiness Report. And that report ranks countries in terms of the level of happiness, looking at 6 criteria. These include health and life expectancy of citizens. It looks at the level of trust of citizens on government and the systems and other people, trusting other people in the country. It looks at the level of generosity in the populace. It looks at also aspect of freedom to pursue your purpose as a people in that country. And of course, corruption as well is looked at. So those are the elements that are measured in these countries.
Yes.
So in terms of the countries that typically score very high, it is interesting that you have countries that have been dominating, for instance, the top 10 of the World Happiness Report. You know, countries like Austria, like Norway, Sweden, New Zealand,
Scandinavian countries.
As you can see, Scandinavian countries are always up there, and I'll talk more as to why they score high. And it's important. And as I said before, Mogobe, I'm very jealous. I'm very jealous because, you know, as people looking at these dimensions, I believe that we, as well as people of Botswana, deserve to, even if our happiness level, as we said before, we are now in the top 10 unhappiest people in the UN Happiness Report. So that's really quite shocking. And one of my really utter concerns is that there doesn't seem to be anybody who's concerned about the level of happiness of our people and what we can do. I accept that some of the stuff is going to take many years to achieve, but I think we have to start looking at the elements, the ingredients that are key for our people to thrive. It's all about thriving, because thriving people, thriving communities lead to thriving countries. And that's really my aspiration, to see Botswana being in the top league. And currently, we've been scoring 146 out of 156. That's very, very bad. And that is why I'm going to share with your audiences some of the characteristics of a happy country, and then also look at Botswana and see what actually, which I've just been dwelling on the negative, what actually works for Botswana, where we can see if we leverage those attributes, we can maybe get there.
Before we get to the positives, let's just clear the negative first. in terms of understanding what the gaps are for Botswana.
Sure.
I think that's one talking point that I really want us to dwell on. What are the talking points? Would you say that our approach in Botswana has been too simplistic, or where have we been going wrong?
Yeah, in terms of Botswana, before we go into the top 10 countries, the challenge with Botswana is that we've had powerful and really magnificent start in terms of independence with SADC, with the discovery of diamonds, with fairly prudent leaders that led us in the 70s and 80s and leading a bit into the 90s. And obviously we cannot take away some of the good things, particularly in terms of GDP. I mean, we are one of the highest ranking country when it comes to GDP per capita in Africa, with about $7,000 for Botswana. So that's very impressive relatively, but obviously that puts us in what they call the high middle income type country. So we still have a lot of work to do, because all the countries that I'll be talking about in the top 10, they're obviously high income countries. So it's one of the essential aspects of a happy country is that people should be able to afford basic things. And even at that level, Botswana cannot afford basic things. But what is important is that
basic things?
Basic things, I mean, to afford to the level of poverty. Obviously, we still have a level of those countries that don't have poverty. Don't have poverty. They don't have a big gap between the rich and the poor. As I discussed last time, like we look at the Gini coefficient, Botswana has got one of the highest gaps between the rich and the poor in the world. Top 3. That's how we're ranked. So it means that there are people at the bottom of our income scale, and we see them. I mean, I'm a farmer, I travel Botswana. You can see that there are people that are almost in a state of helplessness out there in the rural areas, and even here in town. I mean, you talk to people, you can see that is why it's not surprising that we score so poorly in terms of happiness level. Yes, we've got a growing middle class, we've got an upper class, but it's very little if you compare to the Scandinavian countries, for instance, where they are not super wealthy. In Denmark, they're like the States and other rich countries, but they don't have poverty, and they are very happy to pay high taxes because of the welfare state. The state looks after the basics of its people, like free education, like free health. They've got the safety nets. They've got the safety nets that look after the poorest. In that.
But in Botswana, we talk in terms of poverty eradication. We've been saying that the last 10 years. How are we faring?
I think we're struggling. I really think we're struggling. I mean, we have less than 200,000 people living below the poverty line. And then in terms of abject poverty, the economists will correct me, but I think it's about 120,000 people. I mean, Mogobe, with the diamonds that we have, why does it take so many years just to get rid of 120,000 people? That's a small town, and we can't get rid of that poverty level. Sometimes it's really the strategies that we...
The poorest of the poor.
The poorest of the poor, yes. The people that are obviously under $1 per day. Those are the people that we need to... I mean, for me, when I go to the villages and the outskirts of Botswana and I see those people, it actually affects my level of happiness. I'm not in that state. I'm one of the people that can afford 3 meals a day, take my kids to good schools and stuff like that. But if you compare to those people, I feel sad about it. Some of these countries, why they so much they inspire me is because they are happy to pay tax to get other people out of poverty, to make sure that that graduate who hasn't got a job, at least he's got something basic to look after themselves.
Whilst he's looking for
a job, and they are happy to see that they are contributing. I mean, in Denmark, they pay tax up to 60%, and 80% of the Danes are happy to be paying that tax. This is out of survey. They are happy because they see where the tax is going to.
Because it has other maybe indirect consequences like lowering of crime and so on.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean Denmark. I'll keep using Denmark because it's a very fantastic country in terms of happiness, where the women with the kids, they can live at a young kid on a pram at a park and actually go buy something, and they expect to find the kid totally untouched.
Yeah.
That obviously is unheard of in some of these countries.
Let's talk about Africa. Which countries are doing well in Africa?
In terms of Africa, I find it even very awkward to discuss how countries are doing in Africa, because out of the 156, we don't even make it to the top 52. No African country scores
54
52.
countries when I last checked.
Yeah,
so
we don't score. Yeah, they don't. None of them feature in the top 54. And the countries that obviously score better, interestingly, are countries like Nigeria that score better. Your Morocco and those type of countries. Yeah, but they are really still very unacceptable in terms of. So we don't have thriving nations in Africa. That's really what we're saying.
SADC, there's nothing.
No, there's
even
nothing.
Mauritius.
Even Mauritius. Mauritius is one of those that are under 100, but it's not in the top 52.
Not in the way that.
The top 50. So there's really, that is why for me
because
it is something.
I'm asking you about Mauritius because I've heard that it's zero unemployment.
Yeah, GDP-wise and unemployment. But obviously, like I said, there are a lot of ingredients that go into a well-being.
Yes.
And those are the elements that have to go together in terms of trust in the system, in terms of freedom to follow your purposes, and so forth. So there are a number of ingredients that make that holistic view of what... I mean, for instance, talking about other nations, Asian countries don't score very well in terms of happiness, although their economies are thriving. I mean, you talk about Japan, which at one stage was the second largest economy in the world before Germany came in. You're talking about, and those countries don't score very well because they have, I think you must have heard that Japan typically has had very high suicide rates because they take working hard and that type of character, they take it too far. They take it too far and they really struggle. I mean, in countries like Korea, they got this disciplined approach where, suffering is part of...
So they're doing well in terms of material.
In terms of material and GDP, they are doing... And this is where I worry about Botswana. No, there is a... Okay, let me talk about the correlation of GDP per capita to happiness, because it's very important. Why I'm concerned about Botswana is because it is shown that for the poorer countries, for poorer people who don't have much in terms of health, in terms of education, in terms of having a shoe on, for them money is a big thing, and it's understandable that we have to get the economy right for those people, because then they will be very unhappy. But when you get to a certain level of income, it is estimated in the United States that about $75,000 per annum. When you get that, for any additional $100 after that, it makes absolutely no difference to your happiness.
Really?
Even in the States, it has shown that the happiness of a CEO to the guy working as a secretary or as a gardener, the level of happiness is very, very... This guy is happy, he can get his 3 meals a day, child goes to school, there's safety, there's public transport.
So there's a point,
yes, where it becomes irrelevant and the line, and I can show you the graphs in terms of Europe and also the United States, where now they're not getting any happier with any growth in GDP.
So what do you say to those entrepreneurs who are just pushing for money, thinking that it will make them happy?
I have been there because our education system, unfortunately...
I've heard the expression that money won't buy you happiness, but poverty won't either. No,
absolutely. Yeah. No, you need a certain level of there's a threshold that once you go into. So this pursuit of money and material, those people, you must have, in the last couple of years, the number of rich people that have committed suicide, globally, you must have read about it, that famous chef who died in France, and I know another fashion billionaire in the States who committed suicide. It's very normal for people that have a lot of cash, but they fail to have a soul in life. They don't have, they don't have friends, they don't have good families, they don't have, they chase money and no bigger purpose in life that you do. As an example, at InnoLead, we talk about how our mission is to help organizations and government to execute good policies that will make our people's lives better.
Yes.
And that's what wakes us up in the morning. And that's what the team, that's what keeps us going. That's the purpose. The more government implements, the more we get joy out of it. So these are the type of things that are important, that you got to have a purpose, and a purpose cannot be to chase money. You know, as they say as well, you got to be happy first before you become successful.
Yeah.
And true. People think that you have to chase
I have
money.
to bring you back to Botswana. I want you to identify, if you could, things that we're doing well.
Yeah.
And where we are doing well and need to improve.
Okay.
I think let's pivot a little bit to the positive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of Botswana, I think there are attributes that we can build on. Now, before we go to Botswana, just quickly, some of those aspects that characterizes the top 10 countries in the world,
Yes.
the ones that I named earlier on. Those countries, typically they have very beautiful landscape, very beautiful scenic views. If you take New Zealand, if you take Canada, if you take Norway, I mean, Norway is seen as one of the most beautiful countries in the world. So beauty goes with happiness. Somehow.
Yes, aesthetic beauty.
Yeah, aesthetic beauty, and I'm referring to it because you know that Botswana has got a very beautiful aspects of it in terms of, for instance, the Okavango, the Chobe.
Yes.
But you know the story about the Chobe. Who enjoys it most?
Yeah.
The foreigners.
But I'm supposed the locals enjoy the beauty also.
The what of the Okavango.
Yes.
But yeah, but who are forced to go there? Who benefits? Who goes there?
Yeah.
Very few. It is the economic uplifter of Gaborone who can afford to book a camp in Chobe. But I'm talking about the people out there, the general public who dream of a boat ride, a Mokoro ride in the Okavango. So we have those aspects. That's why I'm saying, what are the positive? I'm saying we have an absolutely beautiful country, Mogobe. I farm, the open skies, the stars, and even when visitors come, the wildlife.
What else?
So beauty is a very critical component of it. And also these countries have very strong community connection in terms of trust and family and those type of things. And I mean, for instance, in the happiness report, a country like Austria scores 8.6 out of 10 in terms of community connectivity, in terms of people relying on each other, a spirit of community, not having these high screen walls to your neighbor that we adopted from South Africa. We think in Botswana it's a big deal. It's actually counter happiness, and I'm guilty of that as well. Instead of I should be able to see my neighbor and chat across the fence, but now we think it's a big deal, screen wall, all that stuff. That stuff that's counted. In these countries, people trust each other. They are neighborly. They are together. So in Botswana, why I'm saying is a positive in Botswana is because culturally we are very community connected. We are very family. We look after our grandmothers. We used to even give our kids to our grandmothers. We are struggling to. We still do, but it's going away. Yes, because we tend to copycat countries that emphasize individualism, like United States. You see, unfortunately in Botswana, one of the things that we need to do, Mogobe, is to find ourselves. As a country, and say what will work for us as a country that's unique. And I think Boto, our warm behavior, and this is the things that are said by other people. I've traveled, they said, why are you guys so warm and so receptive? And said that's the principle of Boto. But that's fading away.
I was very surprised when I heard what we are doing poorly when it comes to happiness. I couldn't, at a conceptual level, I couldn't understand why. We still have some of those
elements, absolutely.
So I was wondering why it is not.
It is like that because I believe that in some of the areas we score very badly because there is a lot of cynicism in this country. Cynicism here, I'm talking about things like corruption. I mean, in terms of freedom and corruption, where people do not trust the system. I mean, like I said, in Denmark, the people trust the system over 50% of the time. I mean, they say in the UK, in the 50s, the people of the UK used to trust government and the other people 60% of the time. Now it's dropped to 30%. When you don't trust the system, when you don't trust for your, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's that's what I'm saying, it's extremely low in terms of trust. And those are things that are pulling us down. And you can see today with this perception of corruption, people vote people in, and then the next thing, they don't believe they're doing what they promised to deliver. So that obviously people despair. And in these countries, the democracy is very strong, accountability is very strong. If you don't deliver, you're out. In Botswana, we have this system system of, yeah, what last
You have to wait 4 years.
what last year, yeah, 4 years. And then after 4 years, we're also very forgiving. We quickly forget. And they know that, you know, they know, Baba Twaraba, you know, we say one thing, and then we get it, then we campaign, and They forget that thing, you know, will take a couple of years to, so that's the cynicism that unfortunately we are developing. So yes, in terms of candor and behavior and build, I think the elements are there and we can build on them. But we need to make sure that it's broader than the individual. We have to trust in the system. You know, how we are or you're talking to a police officer, or you got to be able to, in your public office, you got to make sure that they are there for the people. That's the element of it.
I want to ask you specifically whether you believe in Botswana we need to set up a specific ministry. I don't know whether we touched on that last time, but I hear that some of the countries you mentioned
they
have ministries of happiness. Just direct it to us. Do we need to set up such a ministry?
I think for a start, I believe that for Botswana to progress in terms of ensuring that there is a very holistic development of our people in terms of broad holistic well-being, health, social, freedom, money, all those that I've talked about. There needs to be a deliberate establishment of structures to live it, so that we don't focus on a ministry, you see. We look at it in a holistic manner, that we need a structure that looks at that. And there are countries that have taken, you know, happiness and well-being so seriously that they have established Ministry of Happiness. Like a country like UAE, they have established it. And I have to say that even if you establish a Ministry of Happiness, the leader of the country has to be the champion. It's got to champion the love and the wanting for the people to progress and thrive. People have to thrive. So the chief minister of happiness has to be the president. So it has to be the president. And I'm saying this because some of these thriving countries like Norway, like Sweden, like that, they don't have ministers of happiness because the whole entire system thrives on progressing the well-being of their people. And they have measurement systems. I mean, if you listen to the senior minister, Nicola, senior minister of Scotland, I mean, she's developed a framework of measuring, changing this whole thing of GDP being the prominent measure of progress to doing a holistic well-being measure of the people. That's all what these countries are doing. They said there's no point scoring GDP when your people are suffering still. Because the United States, the level of happiness has been dropping every year, just like Botswana now we've been dropping because they think money is in it and they emphasize too much of individual.
Came up with the GDP methodology. He's surprised or was surprised that it has taken so much importance.
Absolutely.
The guy who got I think he was given a
Nobel Prize. Simon Kgengwenyane.
He never intended for it.
No, Simon Kgengwenyane pleaded to Congress and said, please, this is not a measure of well-being of people. This is just a measure of money. Even Adam Smith, the father of capitalism, one of the papers that he wrote, he said we should make sure that we do not dwell on only capital or money as a well-being of people. It's got to be holistic. There's other moral aspects that need to be built into it. So indeed, that's...
Would you say there's anything different or identifiably different between countries that have set up ministry and are doing well, from countries which have set up ministries and are also have not, but that's also doing well? In other words, does the setting up of a ministry, in terms of what is tangible, has it made any?
It's made a big difference. I mean, I'll take UAE. I don't have the statistics right now in terms of UAE, but it's been a couple of years since they established the Ministry of Happiness. But in terms of, happiness is contagious. If you meet someone who's, chaba and is full of laughter and happy, you just spirit is a thing. So now in UAE you have a minister who keeps on going to the communities, to the people. When there is this stuffy announcement of budgets, there's someone who talks about happiness in UAE. And you go to UAE, I mean, every corner you find that they are doing art effects of statues that make you smile and sit and watch. I mean, these are things that I miss for our country. I'm not just saying, we have a city here, you don't even know where to go. We have a museum that I used to visit in 1974, 75, and there's very little difference. And right now, to get my history and heritage, I was telling my family that we have to go to Mafeking to go get more, because they've got a better museum. Bulawayo's got a better museum. Those are the things that when I go to to Canada, I spend hours in the Toronto Royal Museum because it just enriches. Exactly, so much information, and that's my style, because also happiness, obviously, it depends on the individual.
Yes.
But what I'm saying here, there are things that can be done. Yes,
yeah, and identify with.
Absolutely. So the ministry in UAE is looking at all those things that are important for the UAE and make sure that they are built into the system.
Yeah.
Social support, cycling. UAE is busy building the longest cycling path that's free of traffic. You know, these countries, Holland is one of the top 10 countries. Holland, or not Mogobe, it's got 18 million bicycles in that country, more than the population of the country. Because a happy people have to be active. You know, 50% of the population of Denmark go to work cycling.
Yeah.
So it's not a big deal to be in cars. The car culture like United States, that we seem to think it is a big deal.
No,
it is not. No. So my issue is, why can't,
when
we develop
perspective.
Yeah, when we build infrastructure here, why can't cycling paths be part of it? Free of traffic. Let our kids cycle. We've got a beautiful flat land in Botswana, which is very ideal, and lots of sun for riding to work in the mornings. So these are the things that the Ministry of Happiness will look at.
But what do we do at a practical level? Do we lobby SADC? Do we lobby the AU? What can we do regionally to make this thing a reality? In your view, I'd just like you to give a viewer some ideas as to how this thing can really be, I don't know whether there's the right word, inculcated into the system.
Because I really believe that Botswana has a position to lead, to lead Africa. Like I said, there are elements where we are out there. We've got the right GDP. We have a very peaceful country, relatively. Even corruption that we talked about, we score very high relatively in terms of Africa, even in the world in terms of safety. I think we're in the top 30 in the world in terms of safety. So those are things that we need to be able to protect and get them to the next level. Yes. So talking about AU and SADC and all those type of things, I really believe that if we go there and wait for AU, we will wait forever. I just believe that as a country, we need to identify what we believe is right. We have a better balance sheet than all these other countries, so we have a higher chance of being able to fund these issues. But I'm just saying this because AU and SADC are huge bureaucratic entities, and for us to rely on them will be to wait for a very, very long time. I believe that we should use Botswana, where AU and SADC actually use Botswana as an example to go and replicate in other countries. So I'm just saying, like I said, some of the positives that we have an opportunity to leverage that. So in 5 years, even in 5 years, we're going to come down from being 146 in the happiness report to just under 50. I mean, that's a huge achievement.
So how do we then conscientize our politicians? How do we raise awareness? I mean, when I say politicians, I'm even including opinion leaders and NGOs. People are the decision makers. How do we raise awareness and motivate them to see the importance of focusing on this aspect?
It's very difficult. I mean, we talked about one of our work is transformation, and as InnoLead, one of the key aspects that we've been driving in this country is for the country to better at implementing strategic projects, because we waste a lot of money by not implementing project properly. One of the things that we've also identified that we think can take Botswana to the next level is to refine how we measure progress, to take it to this well-being concept compared to just measuring GDP. When I presented at the FNB, at the FNB breakfast budget launch. So this is the start of the journey. So there I was able to speak to an audience that for you even took it further to come and talk to me afterwards. A lot of people, by the way, called and we discussed that. So it's again up to the, like I said, opinionated people. As consultants, we are observers of society. So when you observe something, we've got to take it to heart and try and make a difference. So I've gone to the office of the president to try and ask for a presentation. I've invited one of the top gurus in the world, as I said last time. No, I'm still waiting. Still working on
maybe you should ask whoever somebody out there works for the office of the president.
Absolutely. This is the gentleman who was the who was the chairman of the American Psychology Association, Professor Martin Seligman. He's world-renowned. He's consulting for countries across the world, for schools, building a better society through well-being and happier students, happier countries. And I talked to him, and he's ready to come to Botswana. He's actually ready to come to Botswana this year out of his staff. But he said, look, talk to your authorities. So we are trying to approach. We've written letters to the Office of the President to say, please, can you give us an opportunity to be able to get Professor Seligman here, and at least just to share perspectives and clarify the whole concept of happiness and well-being for a country to cabinet, because those are our leaders currently, and the cabinet, the president, and so forth. So it is it's not going to get things in Botswana to do things differently. From my history of 30 years of consulting, it's not easy.
Well, tell me about it.
It's not easy.
I know.
But as a transformation practitioners, it is our responsibility to keep nudging at it.
We don't give up.
And obviously, we will not rest. That's why I was very happy to jump at this opportunity, because it's another forum to get to our people, to try and get this topic out there. And we will carry on to see what we can do, because really, it's something that we need to do for our grandkids.
Yes.
We need to, because they need to
in fact, what I was going to ask you as we come to the close is just to give us concluding thoughts, just general ideas. You mentioned grandkids, something to leave the audience with, to leave the listeners with, relating to why you're so passionate about the subject.
Okay.
Perhaps you should face the camera.
Yeah, no, I'll do that. I think to why I'm really passionate about this subject, audiences out there, Lerumo, is because I have seen myself as an individual, as and this is a bit unfair, I've done some assessments of myself, a lot of assessment tools on the net, including the one by Professor Seligman, where you assess your level of happiness. And I've scored above average. And people have told me that you seem to be a very optimistic, enthusiasm type of fellow. And then I've interacted with our staff, with our team at InnoLead, our team at Digital Hire. I've seen people bringing negative energy to the office. I've seen people say, this person is saying this. This is not a happy person. You know, I've seen our leaders. You know, when you have leaders that practice corruption, that steal from the same people that are supposed to progress, that's an unhappy,
supposed to defend and protect.
Thinking that's an unhappy person. And then I saw the statistics by the happiness report. It just confirmed that while we are not innovative, like we said earlier, we talk about doing things differently, you know, taking this country to the next level. It requires transformation. You cannot transform if you are not happy, if you are not enthusiastic, if you are not an optimistic person, because then you inspire other people. If you don't have a self of purpose. So that is why it means so much to me. I have kids, you know, I have teenage boys, and we discuss the state of affairs at schools. The rate of mental issues with our kids, I can predict that if you don't do anything, it will go to epidemic proportions. I'm saying this because in the United States, it's gone really bad. And I can see it in our schools building up in terms of not having this. So Professor Seligman, when I study the subject, they have built well-being curriculum in schools in Southern Australia. Over the years, they've seen improvement in marks, in performance. They've seen improvement in terms of generosity of those students. They've seen decreased bullying. They've seen decrease in level of depression of the entire school. Interestingly, it even boosted the teachers. So the teachers became happier, and everything got. So you can imagine now if you infuse this in a whole community, in a whole country, and this is the picture that, like I told you at the beginning, I'm jealous of. And that is why it is so important for me, because I think the more happy people we have, the better the companies, the more innovation we will have, the better the leaders, quality of leaders we have, and I think that will take Botswana to greater heights as per Vision 2036, where we aspire to become a high income status country. It should not be based on how much money the country has. It should be based on how well our people are in terms of broad, holistic, good life, as Aristotle put it.
Wow, that was one of the most inspiring shows I've had. I've really been touched.
Thank you, Mogobe.
How do these listeners, these viewers of ours, take this conversation further? How do they reach you if they need to, in terms of your services and so on?
Okay, I think first of all, we are very reachable on email. Just type InnoLead at innolead.co.bw or catch us on a number 71303682. And we can discuss the subject, how we can take it to the next level, and we can take the communication from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kgengwenyane. It remains for me to thank you, dear viewer, to thank my wonderful, illustrious guest. He's shared from the bottom of his heart, so I urge you please to like the content we just shared, and also express your appreciation by definitely subscribing to this Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. Until next time, this is your host, Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe, signing off. Thank you very much.
Thank you, listeners. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.